Let the record show that is the affirmative, and you all can sit down now. And you will each have 5 minutes for your opening testimony, starting with Mr. Winn and then proceeding to your left, my right. Mr. Winn.
Hello, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Department of Corrections number 296659, or Terrence Winn, a native of the plantation known as Angola by way of Shreveport. Angola is also known as the Louisiana State Penitentiary, an 18,000-acre prison larger than the island of Manhattan. My name change took place on December 25th, 1989, when I was a 16-year-old kid and took the life of Jeffrey Owens and attempted to take the life of DeJuan Lewis. For my actions, I was arrested and taken to Shreveport's Juvenile Detention Center, where Judge Gallinger ordered that I be tried as an adult. I was immediately taken to juvie and left in a one-man cell at the parish jail. For my crimes, Judge Hamilton gave me life without the possibility of parole, plus 25 years to be served at hard labor. I heard my mother cry when the judge read the sentence, but I promised her and myself that one day I would come home. I was eventually transferred to Angola, at the time one of the bloodiest penitentiaries in the world. Upon entering the gates of that former plantation, one sees a beautiful manicured lawn. There are flowers and open fields. For 1 second, I thought maybe this wouldn't be so bad. That second didn't last. Within a few days, I was transferred to the infirmary, where a doctor is in charge of determining if a person is fit to work the fields. As a 17-year-old, the doctor confirmed that I was fit to work. I had never worked a day in my life when I found myself walking out of a gate, rifles pointed at me, next to a guy that I didn't know. The line was made up of 125 men. When the last guy came through the gates, we were counted by the guards, and the field foreman got on his horse and gave an order, walk it out. The field is a back-breaking work. Every day we would walk for miles in excessively hot weather and work sometimes bent over on our knees without breaks for hours. We would go in to eat, then out again until the day was finished. Working in the fields, I was forced to goose pick, that's picking grass with your hands. I was forced to dig ditches. I was forced to cut the levee with a hoe, while officers on horses looked over us holding rifles. There were a few occasions when the field warden decided to bring the line in early from work. Those rare occasions happened when one of the horses would fall due to the oppressive heat. If a man fell over, we kept working. If you got injured, you kept working. Nothing took precedence over going to work. I witnessed tools fights that led to the death of a man and was kept working until I got and kept working. I suffered a back injury at the age of 25, an injury I live with today, and I was forced to work until I got so tired of suffering that I chose to be sent to the hole. That's the dungeon or administrative segregation. I spent 30 years at Angola. 25 of those years was spent working in the field. I received 75 disciplinary write-ups for aggravated work offense. This means, in layman terms, refusing to work. I mostly refused to work because of the physical pain, more so than out of a rebellious nature. I admit, though, every time I was told to pick cotton, I refused to do it. Every time I chose to go to the dungeon, 2 cents an hour, 8 days a week, 2 cents an hour, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That is the pay that makes us human and not slaves. Those 2 cents never made me feel better than how I know my ancestors felt. I felt humiliated every time I had to use the restroom in the field, every time a horse defecated in my path as I walked to a work site, every time a guard refused to let me use the restroom with threats of writing me up, every time a white field foreman called the whole line ends or boys, and every time a guard took their anger out on me while I worked. Was the modern version of slavery better for me than it was for my ancestors? 2 cents is what separates 17th century slavery and 21st century slavery. The dungeon replaces the whip as punishment. The dungeon is a place of humiliation where you're stripped of all your possessions and placed in a jumpsuit. You can only have a toothbrush and toothpaste, nothing else. Just you and your thoughts and the sounds of people losing their minds or fighting or being beaten to death. After 25 years being forced to work in fields, I was assigned as a tail walker, a job that forces you to be an MA guard. The job requires me to walk up and down the extended lockdown tiers for hours, making sure that no one was trying to commit suicide. You become a security guard and a mental health worker while being labeled as a rat. I also attended the Culinary School of Arts in Angola, and once I completed the course, I became a kitchen worker. My last job was a nurse's aide, a job that changed my life forever, taking care of people who were dying and could no longer take care of themselves, showing care and compassion for guys in their final days. That truly changed me. 30 years of incarceration and hard labor. I never made more than 16 cents an hour. It would have been easy to come home and never look back. But when I was released, I found my old neighborhood plagued with violence and a lack of resources. So I immediately knew what I needed to do. I founded my organization, PIPES, Priorities, Intentions, and Practical Exchanges. Our mission was and remains today to make life better for our community members, especially our youth, while working with formerly incarcerated people in their reentry process. Post-incarceration syndrome is real, and our people need support. I still think about my family all those years serving time with me. I think about the families of people who are incarcerated today, all of them directly impacted as well. My goal doing the work I do is to keep our communities safe and thriving. I believe we can create a system that does not simply punish perpetrators, but works with them while investing in our community and taking care of victims. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winn. Professor Armstrong.
Good afternoon, Chairman Booker, Ranking Member Cotton, members of the subcommittee, and Senator Kennedy. Thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. And as Senator Booker mentioned, I teach in the areas of constitutional law and criminal law. I also research incarceration law and policy. I have also visited and audited prisons and jails across the country. In March 2024, Mr. Pharrell Scarborough, an incarcerated worker at Louisiana State Penitentiary, died after falling from a flatbed truck and being crushed by heavy lockers. According to the incarcerated witnesses, there were no guardrails or safety straps on that truck. And unfortunately, Mr. Scarborough is not the only preventable death that has occurred in the incarcerated workplace. The Associated Press has documented deaths and significant injuries, including amputations, of incarcerated workers across the nation. In a 2021 Law Review article, Beyond the 13th, I discussed 4 key features of the American incarcerated labor system. Incarcerated people are forced to work for little or even no pay in some states, in dangerous working conditions, with little value for themselves, their communities, or in fact, public safety. Today, though, I just want to highlight 2 features of that system. 1, the coercive context in which incarcerated labor occurs, and 2, the lack of legal protection for incarcerated work conditions. So let's go to the first. When you are in the 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week custody of your employer, employee discipline looks different. It can be much more severe. If your supervisor, who is also a prison guard, is not pleased by your work or your job performance, he can send you to solitary confinement. He can deny you visits with your children or with your spouse. These prison guard decisions are really difficult to challenge after the fact. The Prison Litigation Reform Act makes it hard to access federal courts, and even if you make it to court, legal doctrines defer to prison guard decision-making. The possibility of severe punishment can also deter incarcerated workers from advocating for their own safety. Refusing to work in dangerous conditions could even lead to new criminal charges and new sentences in some states. And we, the general public, have no idea, because this forced labor occurs in spaces that lack independent oversight, transparency, and accountability. The second point I want to emphasize is that incarcerated workers are generally unprotected by existing employment and workspace law. Incarcerated workers, especially those who are working for the prison itself on prison grounds, are often not considered quote unquote employees by federal agencies or by courts. This is in part because Congress has been silent on the matter. The lack of workplace protection is compounded by the lack of remedies for job-related injuries. This coercive context of incarcerated labor, combined with the lack of protection or remedies, makes incarcerated labor exploitative and dangerous. Working conditions behind bars can kill and injure incarcerated workers. It burdens families, it stretches staff and resources, and can undermine a central purpose of incarceration, namely to ensure that crimes do not reoccur. But we can choose a different path. If the goal is better public safety through reducing recidivism, we can make incarcerated labor look like free labor, and that will better prepare incarcerated workers for future freedom. This could include measures to protect incarcerated workers and workplaces, easing access to courts, and enhancing transparency, including data on work-related injuries and discipline. In conclusion, incarceration law and incarceration labor touches us all. Some of us send money to support a loved one behind bars because they only earn pennies a day. This hurts rural, poor, and minority communities in particular. Some of us buy goods from private corporations that were produced with prison labor. And prisons are also our institutions. They operate in our name with our tax dollars. And when incarcerated labor is exploitative, it undermines public trust and legitimacy of our criminal justice system. I urge this subcommittee to treat these issues with the urgent attention that they deserve. Thank you for the opportunity to share my research, and thank you for holding this hearing.
Thank you, Professor Armstrong.